here today with NASA intern Bobby. Hi, Bobby.
Hi.
Do you want to give a bit about yourself, like your background and where you're from and how you got into NASA?
Yeah, again, my name is Bobby. I grew up in New Jersey, which for those of you who may not be too familiar with the US is maybe 2 hours from New York City. I studied mechanical engineering at Rutgers University, which is also located in New Jersey. And there I did a concentration in aerospace as well. So it's sort of almost like a minor type thing. While I was at Rutgers, I interned for 2 separate summers at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, which is located in Huntsville, Alabama. Uh, and I'm currently a PhD student at Texas A&M University studying aerospace engineering.
Interesting. So, what made you want to study aerospace engineering as a PhD?
Well, I was always as a yeah, I was always as since I was young interested in both planes and space as well as making things, so like building things like Legos was a big thing as well as some 3D puzzles and everything. So I always kind of had that mathematical mindset, and so engineering and then in aerospace, flight always fascinated me as well. Just being able to, especially building little like drones and stuff like that, just being able to get them in the air. So that always fascinated me. So that's why I chose aerospace engineering.
Okay, so the next question is, how did you get into NASA? Like, what was the process there? Was it straight in there, or was it more of a step-by-step process?
Well, I did a summer internship at NASA, so the actual application process wasn't too bad. Every year in the late fall, early spring, they put out uh, internship applications for the upcoming summer. They also have stuff in the fall and spring times as well. But I did it in the summer. I really got into the project though, because while at Rutgers, I did some research with a professor in the mechanical engineering department. The project was titled In Space Additive Manufacturing. So we essentially how 3D printing would work in space or in a low gravity environment. So during my sophomore year at Rutgers, I was able to work on that project on campus. And then it was funded in part by NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. So I was able to sort of get my foot in the door there. And then when the application time rolled around, able to apply for a internship through the branch that was sponsoring it, and then fortunately get the internship and then go back for 2 separate summers.
So, would you say, because from like an outside perspective, because NASA is such a big company, a lot of people might be scared or be like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get into this company. How difficult would it have been?
I mean, it definitely is more difficult than say some general normal internships you might want to get, but I would say it's not something that should feel out of reach for anybody. You can, and it's encouraged actually to apply to multiple positions there. I think each year you could apply up to like 15, which is honestly probably enough applications for you to do, but you could um, so I wouldn't say don't if you don't think you're smart enough or have the qualifications, just to apply anyway and apply to what seems interesting to you. And then um, there's even if you don't get one, but not to be discouraged by that and to keep applying. Because there was a few my freshman year I didn't think I would really have the right stuff to get an internship there, but um, and I did apply and not get anything, but didn't let it discourage me, and kept applying, and got what I ended up interning for.
Um, so the next question, as we're on the topic of NASA, what would a typical day be for you, or is there such thing as a typical day at NASA?
Well, unfortunately, it's not like I'm working with astronauts constantly, although it did. I did get the opportunity to meet a handful. A typical day is a lot like any engineering job, really. So my specific project had um, some hands-on with building parts for the printer, as well as doing some experiments. So seeing what kinds of basically characterizing the printer, seeing what types of shapes and stuff we could print with it. So I spent about half my time on the computer in an office doing coding, as well as designing parts on CAD and stuff like that. And then the other half actually like in either in the machine shop or in the lab area doing some work with the doing some more hands-on work with the printer. So I mean, it depends a lot on the project, and every day is a little bit different. So
Does sound interesting. So the next question would be, what inspired you to work for NASA, or what inspired you to keep trying? Because I know you said earlier it's more about keep going, keep wanting it.
well, I said before, I was always very interested in aerospace, and NASA is of course one of the biggest um, biggest agencies that you could be working for aerospace. So I think for me, being starting out small as well, like working at Rutgers doing stuff that's related to it, really inspired me to keep going and to apply for the internships and everything. And a few other, some of my other extracurriculars at that time were related to aerospace as well. So I had the AIAA, which is American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. I worked on a project that involved building a UAV, or a unmanned aerial vehicle, for a competition. So that aerospace, even though it's not directly related to what I did at NASA, just aerospace stuff like that sort of kept me interested during the while applying and everything.
Yeah. How well did you do in the competition?
We actually did pretty well. We were in the top 10. I forget exactly how many teams, but
Um, what is the next big thing at NASA that you're excited about?
I'm personally excited about two separate things I think are pretty big. The first is the SLS, or Space Launch System. So originally the Saturn V rocket was what brought Apollo era astronauts to the moon, and now with this Space Launch System, that's the plan for that is to bring the next generation of astronauts to the moon through the Artemis program, and then after after getting astronauts to the moon, the plan is to get go use that rocket for deeper space exploration missions, including Mars, but also potentially other missions as well. In addition, this rocket has capabilities to be adapted for different type missions, whether that's bringing cargo to the bringing cargo deeper into space, or bringing a astronaut crew deeper into space. So as far as like the space exploration side, I'm excited about that. The other thing I'm excited about is the James Webb Space Telescope, which recently launched around Christmas time last year. So it should hopefully be getting some of its first images within a couple months from now. And then that's um, it's able to peer deeper into space or deeper or further back into time than other telescopes like the Hubble and ground-based telescopes. So we'll hopefully be able to get information about the origins of galaxies and stars from that, which we previously weren't able to capture light that originated from those times. So that's an exciting, more on the science front.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Is that more making more accurate data than like making pinpointing stuff with the Hubble?
Yeah, it's also based on the wavelengths of light. This is more capturing infrared light, so um, it is more sensitive to, so it's able to capture different light than was able to be captured in the past, and it is more sensitive now. So the light that's super faint, it will be able to capture that, whereas before we weren't really able to do that as much.
No, that does sound interesting. It's two very different areas as well. So sounds like some big, great projects at NASA. Next one is kind of on technology as well. It's more, where do you see space technology going in your lifetime? Is there something where you're like, oh, I know this is going to happen because we're on that type of path? Like maybe with the Webb telescope, we can pinpoint an exact time or something like that. Is that where you see it? Anything else?
This is kind of speculation on my part, but I would really like to see it more permanent presence of humans on such as on the moon and maybe even Mars, or at least regular missions. I'm thinking sort of almost in our lifetime, almost like how Antarctica, there's people that go there for extended periods of time and stuff like it's not a huge town per se, but there's a solid presence. I mean, there is a presence on the space station, but it's not that many people. There's only about like say 6 people at a certain time. I'm not sure exactly how many people are there now, but it's but have more of a sustainable presence like that in space, either in orbit or on the moon, and then also just I hope to see just the cost of launching rockets to become much cheaper and more efficient. So that'll hopefully make space more accessible to everyday people, as well as just make it open up opportunities for more private companies as well to get in and spur innovation faster like that as well.
What is the coolest thing you have seen at NASA, if you can obviously go into anything?
Well, I'll talk about I mean, of course there's multiple NASA centers. So I was at Marshall Space Flight Center. So the coolest thing there, what they're really well known for is their engineering work for building the Saturn V rocket, as well as building the space shuttle and currently SLS. So I think that two coolest things I was able to see there were there's a static fire test stand and a dynamic test stand. So what that basically means is, of course, before launching, obviously you're going to want to test everything. So the static fire test stand is they essentially bolt the rocket down or bolt one of the stages of the rocket down, and they'll fire all the engines. So it's quite, as you can imagine, it's quite a large building there, quite a large stand to make sure it's really stable. So they currently actually do that work now at another center in Mississippi, but originally during the Apollo era, they started doing the static fire test stands right there in Huntsville. And they claim actually the first time they tested it, all the windows in town, or almost all the windows in town, shattered just from the sheer force of it. So I mean, the bigger ones now, they do smaller rockets there now. The bigger ones, they do in a more remote location because of reasons like that. But so it was just a really cool thing to see the sheer size of it. And then the dynamic test stand, similar in the, they need to test everything. So what they actually did there was they subjected the rockets to different forces and essentially vibrations and stuff to try to simulate the what it would experience during launches to make sure that everything is capable of standing up to what's going on, or standing up to what it will need to be experienced. So again, this is quite a large building. I'm not sure if there's able to be pictures shown or anything later of it. It's on Google if you Google it, but it's actually one of the largest buildings in the northern part of the state there, just because it was used for the Saturn V rockets as well as the space shuttle, and there's a similar one being used for SLS now. So it's just to be able to see the magnitude of these things was interesting for me.
That's interesting. So was it like the first time you actually got to see like one of the rockets up close type thing?
Yeah, well, I had seen some of the rockets up close, but you don't really think of all the other equipment and everything that was required to test it out and everything. And we did actually get to go some of the buildings, go in them and go up on the test stands too as interns. So that was interesting to see it really up close.
You may have touched on it a little bit, but what hobbies do you do outside of uni work? And do you think any of these helped you with NASA or helped you get into NASA?
Yeah, well, I did a few hobbies that were aerospace related. So for the AIAA, which I mentioned before, that competition, what I liked about the competition too is we sort of helped get more hands-on. While in class you were more doing theoretical stuff, but really got to learn how things in class applied to more of real life applications. So that was fun. I also actually have my private pilot's license, so I know this actually didn't. That's more of a fun thing for me to be able to go up and fly around. I'm not sure in Europe how much the fuel prices are. I've heard it's a little more expensive to fly there, but um,
Yeah.
it's I don't think the AIAA club definitely the um, helped get into NASA internships. I forget honestly if I put the pilot's license on my application or not. I mean, I don't think it would hurt you, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that you really need to do to be able to get the internship. Other than that, I mean, I really like hiking and backpacking and camping, stuff like that. So sort of sometimes everybody needs a break every once in a while, and it's a good way for me at least to exercise and take my mind off of schoolwork and research work. So that's something that I personally enjoy.
Definitely. Anything like sometimes you can have like a really stressful day and you just need
Mhm.
something that's a good hobby to like help that.
Mhm.
So basically, like with the aerospace, so basically have a hobby that you really like and that could potentially be
Mhm.
related to what you want to do, or just have
I
a
mean,
hobby.
I would definitely think if for me I mean, it's good to definitely have, in my opinion, to have a variety of hobbies and to be able to open your mind to things that you may not have thought you'd be interested in. But I mean, the what I liked about the aerospace or the AIAA club is we're first able to meet other people that are a similar age to you and like also in college. So get to meet some friends um, in your classes and everything like that. And then it's just a good way to socialize too and stuff. And then if you enjoy the competition as well, it's a way for it sort of shows you, at least in my opinion, that this is a career field that would be interesting for you to continue in as a job, and it sort of gets you a hands-on experience earlier in the college career compared to later on.
Definitely. Da, 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 da. Next one. What about what is it about space or space technology you're most interested in? This isn't like it's more you personally. What's
Mhm.
your favorite thing?
For space, I guess the thing that's interesting to me that sort of more captivates me is just how vast it is. So, like, I mean, for instance, I always think of the one famous picture of from the Hubble telescope where they focused it on one dark patch of the sky, and after exposing the exposing it there for a while, they're able to see just a whole bunch of galaxies that they previously hadn't thought of. And when you think of how big the Earth is and then how big the sun is compared to the Earth, and then from that, how many stars are in, how there are billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and then how there's countless other galaxies out there, it just fascinates me how even if we can just explore a very small portion of that, like the moon and Mars in our lifetimes, that's just sort of what fascinates me.
What do you think are the challenges for a career at NASA or the space industry?
Mhm. I get more of a overall answer the question for more of like an overall challenges. I think honestly
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is probably the funding and the public opinion of it. So especially NASA, since it's more of a government run, the priorities of the government can change and cause funding for projects to quickly quickly move around, or maybe the direction of the project. So from an engineering standpoint, for obviously, of course, it's no easy feat getting into space. So projects take multiple years. So if I'm prior to the SLS, there was Ares and the Constellation project, which were canceled. Now SLS does use some portions for that, but as an engineer, it could be difficult seeing a project you've worked on for a while get suddenly canceled or the direction changed for it. But when it does work, to be able to see your something you had a small part in designing being launched off being launched from the launch pad and going to space is really inspiring.
If a project does get cancelled completely, would people try and use whatever research or technology they had built or planned, try and integrate it into a different project? Say, like, so would it be like a complete waste? All their research, everything they've done is in the bin, or would
No,
you?
it definitely wouldn't be a complete waste. For one, there's a whole bunch of spin-off technologies that are developed from space programs that make their way into everyday life. And then in addition, more from a lot of technology that maybe not hasn't come to fruition yet could be um, the the work developing that could be used for other projects later on in the future, like for SLS is using components from, but they're actually using even projects that weren't like canceled that were pretty successful, like the space shuttle. The SLS is using a similar rocket engines that were used for the space shuttle, as well as the booster rockets. They're using essentially very similar designs from there. So being able to not necessarily having to reinvent the wheel at the beginning of every project.
Do you have like any career aspirations in the future? Like, is what you're doing right now what you want to continue doing, or is it kind of like, I want to do this, but then I want to go into like this field, like I want to become an astronaut, that type of thing?
Yeah, well, of course, being a intern and as well as a PhD student, of course, those are stepping stones to something larger. But I would long term like to be on the more the research and development side of the aerospace industry. So ideally, I'd like to have more of a longer term job at NASA. But um, but yeah, I think the research and development side is pretty interesting. Maybe when I was younger, I did want to be an astronaut, but there's a lot of challenges with that field as well. And but even just being able to see um, well, actually, during my first internship, the director said like, how many people want to go to Mars in like when the time comes, and a handful of people raise their hand, and then how many people want to help um, get us to Mars in the next in that same time period, and pretty much everybody raised their hands. So um, it shows that there is a lot of the astronauts are often the ones that get the most glory, I'd say, but
Yeah.
it's very inspiring as well to be more on the engineering side and just having portion being um, having your work go into supporting the space mission.
Yeah. So as you're obviously doing research right now, last one on that one, we may have touched on it. My memory is awful. What would be the dream research project for you then? Like, if there's anything you wanted to research maybe now or something in the future. Like, I know you said get people to basically maybe live on the moon. Would you want to be in that research behind that? Or any?
Honestly, for me, there's a whole bunch of different things. I mean, I guess I just said I didn't want to be an astronaut, but at the same time, any research that would require the researcher to be on the space station or in space would be a very cool opportunity that I wouldn't pass up. So I think long term, I'm working more on the laser diagnostic side, so I am interested in that and how it applies to both testing as well as um, measuring measuring like gas flows and everything. That's sort of what I'm gravitating towards now. Who's to say though it may change later on down the line.
One last one. I know we talked about challenges for NASA, but have you had any personal challenges? Like I know you mentioned you had to apply multiple times to eventually get in. Was there anything else or any type of top tips you could give someone
Mm-hmm.
about
Well, I
it?
guess I'll just kind of repeat. I sort of touched on the subject earlier, but yeah, there's my freshman year, I was looking at some of the um, my freshman year records. I started to look into potential internships in the future, and it just seemed like, oh, it's hard to get into some internships here. Then NASA just seemed too far out of reach. But I would say um, don't give up or think that something's too far out of reach. Don't be afraid to just apply anyway. And even if you get rejected the first few times, to continue applying again and um, look at different projects and um, yeah, to not just be discouraged if um, you tried once and it didn't work, but to try again.
Hmm. Um, well, again, thank you. This has been a great chat interview about your time at NASA and how you got into it and what you see the future being.
Thank you for inviting me.